Hello and welcome to Landscape Photography World, the podcast for everyone passionate about landscape photography. I'm Grant Swinburne and I'll be your host on this show, talking to landscape photographers about their motivations, likes and dislikes. Have you heard that the inaugural Landscape Photography World Awards is now open for entries? Early bird entry is available now at a discounted fee until September 30, 2022. Head to landscapephotographyworldawards.com to find out all the details and how to enter. There's some amazing prizes to be won, and I'll be publishing a book and a calendar with the top images at the end of the competition, so there's plenty to look forward to. Entries close on November 30, 2022, so there's plenty of time to get your entry sorted, but if you want to get into the early birds, do it now. I'd also like to thank the judges who have agreed to work with me and be a big part of the awards. Deb Clark, Victoria Hark, Kieran Stone and William Patino. I certainly couldn't make this competition a reality without their support. This week, Larryn Rae joins me to talk about his stunning Astro and Scenic landscapes from New Zealand and around the world. With a decade of world travel and photography experience, Larryn came to realise that truly remarkable landscapes are more than just photogenic geological structures. Their moods shift with the weather, their faces change in the shadows, and while they danced in daylight, they never lay dormant at night. Larryn fell in love with the way mountains come alive under the Milky Way, the moment the sun and ocean melt together, the haunting comfort of fog banks lighting up as they envelop a city skyline, and the way the stars blur as the world twirls beneath them. It's all led him to what he describes as his compulsion to capture more of these fleeting moments of time in nature, and in the process create portraits of New Zealand's true essence. We discuss how his compulsion has grown, his recent move to the South Island of New Zealand to pursue his passion, and his incredible workflows both in the field and in post-production, along with a lot more. I hope you enjoy the show. Hi Larryn, welcome to the podcast. How are you going?
Good, Grant. Good to be here, man. Yeah.
Oh, thanks for taking the time to talk to me. I've been sort of chasing you for a little while. I know that, and I don't want to harass people, but I like to get the people that I like to get, and you're definitely one that's been on my list for a little while. Been mentioned by a couple of other people as well, which is nice.
Oh, that's good. Good to hear. Yeah.
So why don't we start with why you got started in photography, and in particular, why astrophotography?
I got this fascination with photography because I always found myself at the beach or somewhere in nature watching sunsets and sunrises. I was just used to be a bit of an early bird and used to enjoy hiking and stuff. And then the next thing really was to try and capture it. So I got a pretty decent film camera back in the day, and then I was just playing around with film and shooting these sunsets and sunrises mainly. But it really took off for me when I decided to go backpacking around Europe and Israel 10 years ago. And I knew I wanted to have a good camera for that trip. So I bought my first DSLR.
Sure.
It all just stemmed from there, really. The fascination of travel and wanting to capture different cultures and different landscapes and the things that I was coming across was incredible. And with the astrophotography, my first ever shot was I was staying at this crazy little remote village in the mountains somewhere in the back of Bulgaria.
Okay.
And the skies were incredible, and I wanted to try and shoot it somehow. And I had no idea what I was doing at all, absolutely no idea. So I just started with long exposures, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, all the way up to 4 hours kind of thing.
Getting lots of star trails in, yeah.
Yeah, and it was star trails were the first thing that I ever learned to capture. I didn't really know what else to do. And then from that moment, really the fascination with the night sky in particular really grabbed a hold of me. And slowly I've just been learning different techniques and different ways of capturing in different subjects. And it kind of goes hand in hand with my hiking and my love for the outdoors. So I love, all aspects of photography, but particularly nightscapes and landscapes. Yeah. Sure.
So that link to travel, I guess, seems to be a fairly common thread with a lot of people. How much traveling were you doing, and I guess how much do you think that travel influenced what you were doing and why you were doing it?
I think travel's influenced me a lot, as with a lot of photographers. I think it's the continual search for the new landscape, the new inspiration, and we need to keep searching and seeking these places out and seeing what we can capture and testing our abilities. I know for me, in terms of hiking, I'm pushing my limits
Yep.
all the time. And, as you know as well, probably with camera gear, it adds a lot more weight and a lot more
Oh, yeah.
admin to actually shooting. So there's a lot more things to consider. But I think it's that need to explore and to continually push our own boundaries and new scenes and landscapes that, that's sort of within every landscape photographer, I think.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I mean, my lightweight carry, which is 3 lenses, a body, and a tripod, plus some filters and whatever, kicks in at about 10 kilos. So,
Yeah.
yeah, you add that to any other gear that you want to carry. It's it's a bit of an
Yeah,
effort.
it adds up very, very quickly. Yeah. Yeah.
Mind you, I could probably ditch a lens, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's always that battle of like, what do I leave behind? Really, it's not what do I take, it's what do I leave behind? Because when I'm
Yeah,
going somewhere, I'm usually trying to capture as much of that landscape or that place as possible. So I'm usually taking 2 or 3 cameras, knowing that I might only ever get to that location once. So the setup can be quite heavy, and once you include all the lenses and bits and pieces.
yeah, okay. So talk us through, I guess, the motivation around hiking to some of the remote locations. I mean, some of the shots that I've seen from you are obviously very much backcountry, very much off the beaten track. What is it that, I guess, motivates you to get into those sorts of places and steer clear of, not necessarily the crowds, but steer clear of the more well beaten paths?
Yeah, well, when I was coming up, it's very easy when you're learning just to stick to the side of the road or the easy to drive to spots. But as my journey has grown, I've just got this fascination with wanting to shoot places that haven't been shot before. And I think with Astro, it adds a different dynamic as well of, even more so, like a lot of people haven't seen the night sky in some of these locations,
Yeah,
including
yeah,
myself. So I just have this desire to want to get to these places and capture the night sky. And and I had a lady once message me on one of my images that I posted, and it really struck a chord with me. She said, "Look, I'm old now, and I'll never be able to get to these locations that you're going to. So I really appreciate these shots that you're shooting because I'll never get to
yeah.
see it
Wow.
for myself." And I was like, "Wow, that was like such a powerful comment," because I realized that because sometimes you don't really know who's seeing your images or what influence you're having in people's lives by the things you're creating. And that moment really just moved me. And I thought, wow, I've kind of got this kind of responsibility to show people things that they might not get to see for themselves.
Sure.
And I felt like that just gave me even more inspiration to keep doing what I was doing. So I want to get to these places for myself, but I realize as well other people may never get to these places. So it's kind of an honor to be able to capture these places and show people what's out there. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I guess looking at that aspect of it, that uniqueness of going into places, talk us through the preparation for setting up. I know you recently just got back from a trip up onto top of some mountains to capture some astro. I think it was last week or so.
Usually the first thing for me just starts with like, where do I want to shoot? And then I'm jumping on Google Maps and Google Earth just to scout out the location. And once I've got that in mind, then it's just a matter of weather, especially when you get into the alpine environment, and astro weather is really critical.
Yep.
You can't shoot stars with cloud, and it's a lot of effort to get up there, especially in winter when you need survival gear and all the warm gear.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
adds a lot more complexity. So you really need to be prepared, always be prepared for the worst, because you never know what could happen in the mountains. So then it's a matter of just getting the gear sorted and what do I want to achieve while I'm there, and then bringing the right gear for that. So
yeah.
sometimes I'll go to a location and I want a time lapse as well as just shoot panoramas or single images. So it's just a working out of what gear I need, and then just going and doing it, and then hoping that my planning and my sort of knowledge of the weather pays off.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
How do you deal with the disappointment when you're up on top of the mountain and it's just 2 feet visibility, just sheer fog, you can't see anything? What do you
Yep.
do then?
Yeah, that's happened
Hide in the
more
tent?
than once. Yeah, that's happened a few times. I think you just accept it, like you know what you're going into. I think if you have the expectation that it's always going to be perfect, you're always going to be disappointed.
Oh yeah,
So,
yeah.
so I realized especially with Astro, there's always going to be that chance, and I've been disappointed many times. I think it's every shot that I edit, it's probably like a 5-in-1 strike rate. Like you go to a lot of occasions and you don't get the shot that you hope for.
Yeah.
But usually with Astro and with hiking, I usually wouldn't attempt it if I don't think I've got a good chance of capturing it, because it is a lot of work, and to come away with nothing is incredibly disappointing. But also it gives me the motivation to get back there as well and get that shot if I didn't get it on the first time. So
Yeah, right.
yeah. But yeah, it's
But
normally making sure you got a lot of snacks and some hot drink, and then just chilling at the tent usually.
in terms of going into the field with that concept of what it is that you want to shoot, I guess one of the challenges for a lot of people when they start out with Astro is sort of trying to envisage what it is that they want to get. And a big part of that is knowing where, say, the Milky Way or particular objects are going to be in the sky, or particular astronomical events are going to occur, like a comet or the meteor showers or whatever it is that people want to try and catch. How much research are you putting into that before you head out?
I generally know now from my years of experience where the Milky Way is going to be at even any given time. How that relates to the actual landscape usually is found out at location. Like you can scout and check Google Maps as much as you like, but it's not until you're there till you're actually in the location that you can really tell how that composition is going to look. But I generally know where the Milky Way is going to be, and meteor showers as well. There's plenty of apps that tell you where they're going to be, although you can't plan for the specific.
Yeah. You get a general direction of they'll be in the southwest or whatever.
Yeah, like I just saw the craziest meteor of my life the other night. It literally went from right above me right down to the horizon, and it took about 7 seconds to fall. And my camera, I was in a Milky Way panorama, and my camera was facing completely the opposite direction, and I just saw this thing above me, and all I could do was just watch it, and it was just incredible. But like it's that moment, you just, if my camera was only the other way, so
it's always the way, isn't it?
it's always the way, mate.
Mind you, Pixar, it didn't happen.
yeah, that's what people have been saying. So yeah.
What is it that drives you to get that unique perspective in your photography?
I think I'm really after that one-off moment, that rare shot from a location, that light, because the night sky has its own light. Every night is different. There's a thing called air glow, where the atoms in the sky get charged by the sun during the day, and they light up at night to all usually greens and reds, and every night is different. And I'm chasing that unique shot and that unique sky. I feel motivated just by being out in nature. I've always had a fascination for wanting to be in the wilderness, away from the city.
Yep.
So the photography goes hand in hand with just that solitude that I feel, and that completeness that I feel when I'm out in nature, and capturing those moments, in particular the night sky, are just incredible. Those moments are often shot alone, so it's just me on a mountain. Sometimes I'll be with a mate.
Yep.
But I just seek out those quiet moments on top of a mountain or some remote landscape where it's just me and nature and my camera. Yeah.
Nice. How would you, I guess, for somebody that hasn't seen your work, how would you describe your style, and how do you see that style has developed and is developing?
I think I would consider it like grand nightscapes. Like I love to shoot wide field panoramas, multi-row panoramas that take in the whole landscape that I'm seeing, and the night sky that I'm seeing as well. Not just a single image that captures a portion that gives you a glimpse of that scene, but the whole scene that is unfolded before me.
So you're talking, say, a 180 degree or even more, 270 degree pano?
Yeah, with Milky Way arch panoramas, you need to shoot about 270 degrees to get the full arch in. It's a different different kind of shot to like a rising Milky Way at the start of the season.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think that grand landscape view is it's just incredible to see the whole span of the Milky Way through the night sky. And my style's changed a lot. When you're starting with single images usually, and you kind of learn in your craft how to capture that one image well, and then you go to, it might be stacking that single image, and then you want to try and capture more. So you start shooting panoramas and stitching panoramas and multi-row panoramas. So I think it's the inevitable journey of an astrophotographer wanting to develop more skills and more capture techniques. And I think that's how my journey's grown.
Okay. Where do you see it going in terms of development? Because a lot of people say, if you don't change your style or you don't change what you do, you basically stunt your growth. So how do you find growth in that, getting to where you are now, which is pretty much top of your game? Where do you take it next?
Yeah, I mean, the whole journey is interesting. Like, I never want to feel like I've made it in terms of like I've reached a point of like, I feel like at the top of my game, I think it's this transient thing. I feel like for right now, I'm happy with where I'm at, but I don't want to stay here. And I think for me, I mean, there's always new software and new edit techniques to learn. But for me, I feel like my journey is going, the locations are really important to me now. Like, I'm not interested in shooting on the side of the road, not interested in capturing shots that anyone can just pull over and capture. So the challenge for me is to find locations that push me physically further and into places that haven't been captured. I've got a real fascination for these kind of places in the remote wilderness. So I think for me, my journey is going to be pushed more in towards that kind of development. And with better gear and better lenses comes better imagery. But I feel like it's the artist and the location makes the shot, because basically now anyone can shoot the Milky Way if they want.
But you can do it on a phone now,
Yeah. So I feel like it's the location and the composition that really set shots apart. And the ones that I see from other photographers that inspire me are ones that I haven't seen before, from locations that I haven't been to.
Yeah.
Something new, because photography's saturated and astrophotography is incredibly popular now. So I just want to stand out from the rest, not to just stand out from the rest, but for me, it's the challenge of wanting to capture those images for myself, because I love exploring and I love hiking and adventuring. So that's my challenge. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. You talked a little bit about gear, and I mean, this podcast doesn't usually talk much about gear, but Astro is a little bit different to, I said kind of tongue-in-cheek, you can take a shot with an iPhone now, but if you want to get serious about Astro, what sort of gear do you need?
It all starts off with a good quality DSLR and a good fast lens. So there's cameras that have been around for like 10 years now that can do a pretty decent job of capturing the night sky. Sensors are important, but a fast lens is probably more important, I think. So I usually use f1.4 lenses. Stop them down. I have a star tracker, which I can't always use, because if there's wind, you need stillness. So sometimes you can't use a tracker. So sometimes all the best gear is not available to you at the location because of those factors like wind. So sometimes it's just about you having a camera and a lens and a good solid tripod. A solid tripod is an absolute must, because you're talking about long exposures from 15 to 30 seconds usually. So you just need to have
something that's rock solid, not going to vibrate or
you just need to
move around or wobble.
Absolutely, mate. And there's so many times which a little bit of wind or a little bit of something has caused a blurry image. So
it's funny. I see a lot of photographers just doing seascaping and that sort of stuff, or even around the city, where they've set themselves up on the tripod and they've still got the strap hanging off the camera, and there's a bit of a breeze going, and you can see it's not going to give you the idea. If you're doing
Yeah,
long exposures, that's not going to
yeah.
work for you.
No, you want to eliminate anything that can cause camera shake, and
Yeah.
that's a real rookie one. That one, I've seen it a lot as well, and I started like that as well. I didn't know.
Yeah, everybody does. Yeah,
Yeah,
well, yeah. I tell you what, one of the main reasons is, at least in the Canon range, the straps are a pain in the backside to take on and put back on.
yeah.
So I guess moving away from the gear and back to the why, are you doing this now professionally, or is it a part-time gig, or is it a hobby? What is it within your life?
It's more than a hobby. It's an obsession, really, and an
I guess it
addiction.
has to be. And you find
Yeah,
most people that are good at what they do are obsessed with what they do.
yeah. I would say I'm serious part-time, moving towards more full-time. My background is working in film and TV as my main job, my main source of income. And with COVID and everything that's happened over here the last 2 years, the work basically just dried up. The whole
Yeah,
industry
sure.
just got decimated. So I found myself moving more into photography, and trying to get that side of things working for me more and more. And there's a few exciting things coming up. I can't really share at the moment, but
Yeah, that's fine.
me and another photographer have got something pretty exciting ahead in the future that we're working on. So that will come to light in the next few months. Yeah, so moving more into being full-time photography. I feel like with COVID, that's just accelerated my intentions and what I want to do with my life and what I want to achieve. And with that, I realized what I was truly passionate about. By having everything kind of stripped back and taken away, I was
Yep.
forced into thinking, well, what do I want to do with what can I control? What do I want to do? How do I want to live, and what do I want to achieve? And it was just a natural progression for me to want to pursue photography more, because I love it, and it's my life, and it's my obsession, and it's what I want to do with my spare time. So yeah, things are moving more into that direction. And I've moved from one end of the country to the other in the last 5 weeks, mainly to be out of the city and more into the environment where I'm surrounded by nature, and to get to some of these places isn't such a struggle anymore. So
Yep.
that's been a huge motivator and a huge change in my life to make that happen. So yeah, just because it's one thing to talk about something, and there's another thing to actually act on that, and I've acted on that. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm setting myself up and building basically a new life for myself down here in Wanaka. It's it's a slow burn, but it's on its way.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the move. You were based in the North Island up until a few weeks ago or a few months ago. Why Wanaka, and why the move down south?
I moved to Auckland 13 years ago to film school and to work in the film and TV industry. And I was loving the life there while I was working, and I loved what I did. Work was good, things were good. But I'd always find myself flying down to the South Island 3 or 4 times a year for photography. And through those trips, I realized that one day I want to be down here. I want to be in it. And I don't want to be flying down when, say, there's an aurora or some event, or I wanted to be here and have things more on my terms rather than what was happening in Auckland. And through the pandemic and everything, it just became, with work disappearing, it just became living in a big, hectic city.
Yeah.
And I just got so frustrated and so overwhelmed with just everything there. It really did my head in, and I just knew it was time. My time was coming. And I guess, the pandemic just accelerated that transition to want to be in the South Island. So
Sure.
earlier on this year, or like a few months ago, I decided I'm done, just absolutely done. So I just started trying to figure it out. And after we went through that 4-month lockdown, I got on a road trip end of last year, and I just came down to the South Island for 3 months and just traveled around and
Nice.
was just thinking and scouting and just getting myself in a good mental space again, because I wasn't doing too well at that point. And it wasn't until I drove into Wanaka, because I was thinking, where do I want to move to? Where do I want to be? And at first I thought it was going to be Queenstown, because there's a lot more going on there in terms of sort of industry, film industry, just jobs, a bit more work and a bit more vibe. But when I was there, I felt like, no, I actually want to go somewhere more quiet, because I'm so sick of the hustle and the hecticness of city life. And Queenstown felt like a little slice of Auckland. And when I drove into Wanaka, it just felt like this is where I wanted to be, with the place being surrounded by mountains, and the populations are quite considerably less than Queenstown, and it just felt calm and peaceful, and that's what I was after. So I just knew this was where I wanted to be, and then it was a matter of making it happen for myself, and then making the move, and then just figuring it all out. And I've been here 5 weeks now and starting to feel settled. But I knew when I moved here, it was the right decision, and everything now is on my doorstep, and I've been on so many adventures already, and it's just been incredible, mate. Like, I can't.
Well, that's fantastic.
Absolutely no regrets at all. Yeah.
No, that's great. That's great. And fantastic to hear that that's working out for you. How are you balancing work and your photography? Clearly, the photography is things are starting to tilt more in that direction than back towards work. What are you doing for work at the moment, and how are you managing that balance?
So I wanted to find some work down here. So at the moment, I'm working as a ski rental tech in a ski shop here. I work part-time, so it gives me the flexibility to work on my own things and have my own adventures at the same time, because I didn't want to just get full on into work where I couldn't focus on my photography, but I didn't want to have no work where I didn't have some routine. So I felt like it was important to just get established and just get a routine down here, and feel like I was kind of contributing to the move by having that routine. But I've got a lot of flexibility to go on the adventures that I've been on, and to work on some business stuff behind the scenes. So it's a great balance for me at the moment. Yeah.
Nice to hear.
Mm-hmm.
So for people that don't know the Wanaka area, I mean, it's hard to believe that people don't know about it, but given the exposure that tree has, but and you can now go and shoot it when the crowds aren't there, which is nice. But how do you describe the area for someone that hasn't been there, and how far is it to some of your favourite locations?
So Wanaka is it's considered a small town. It has around about 10,000 people as permanent residents. It's surrounded by mountains. It's right next to a lake. It's got the Wanaka tree, which most photographers around the world would know. I'd say it's one of the most, if not the most, photographed tree in the world.
Potentially,
yeah. And it sits in the middle of not in the middle, but out in the water. It's a very unique spot, and it is overshot, and people complain and moan, but then obsess over it as well. So it's got a lot of people have a lot
iconic
of
places are iconic for a reason.
Exactly. But I'm 5 minutes drive from the lake, 5 minutes drive to work. I'm 10 minutes drive to one of the hikes, Roy's Peak, which is also a famous hike now. And I'm so close to so many locations. I'm 2 hours to the coast. I'm 2 hours to the Mackenzie, Mount Cook, Tekapo, and all the lakes around there. An hour to Queenstown, a couple of hours to the southern coast down in the Catlins.
Yep.
It's a very, very central location here, and it's just surrounded by snow-capped mountains in the winter, and in summer it's incredibly warm as well. It's
you literally live in Middle Earth.
Oh, mate, it's just beautiful. It's just nature. It's quiet as well. There's no traffic noise. There's no hustle. It's relaxed.
Yeah.
It's just everything that you could want coming from a mad, crazy city. So,
yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
So what's your favourite spot? What keeps calling you back that you keep getting drawn to, because either you haven't nailed it or you've nailed it but you just love it?
There's 2 places down here that really inspire me and that I want to come back to more, and that's the Mackenzie country. And the Mackenzie country is just a massive area. It's Lake Tekapo, it's Twizel, it's Mount Cook, it's Lake Ohau, it's the Lindis Valley, and there's just incredible locations all in amongst these places. And they're just inspirational. There's just so many areas and different spots and different weather conditions all through the seasons. And then the other area is Fiordland, which I feel like I've only just started to tap into. And that's probably about 3 or 4 hours drive from here. But it's an area that hasn't been shot that much, that is incredibly sparse and remote. and probably one of the most untouched parts of New Zealand, if not the world as well, especially for photography. So,
yeah.
aside from the hotspots of Milford Sound and Te Anau, there's a lot to explore there. And I went on my first proper hike there earlier on this year and couldn't believe where I was standing at points. They're just on top of small mountains, just surrounded by little lakes and tarns, and just the layers. It was just incredible, mate. And I feel that's a place that I absolutely want to get into. So my
Cool.
summer plan is to hike. Yeah.
So do you see yourself retiring in Wanaka, or living out the rest of your life, or is there still a desire to get out and about further afield than New Zealand and out into the world more?
I think, man,
I know it's probably early to talk about retirement for you.
No, I don't know. I never want to say never, but I feel this is like home,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm from New Plymouth originally, and it's a small city on the west coast of the North Island, and that will always be home.
Yep.
This feels like the next best thing, because I always wanted to live in the mountains and I always wanted to be in nature. And this is kind of as good as it gets, I feel, in New Zealand. So if I retire here, I would be happy. But, I still have a desire to travel and stuff, but I feel this is a great base. This is a great place to be based. I've got some friends down here and I feel like more connected down here than anywhere in a long time, especially Auckland. So, if I had to retire here, mate, it wouldn't be a bad thing.
Yeah, I don't imagine too many people complain about retiring around the Wanaka area.
Yeah, you must have shot down here a bit.
Honestly, I've never been to the South Island. I've been to the North Island for work several times. Been to Wellington, Auckland. I did a longish weekend with the wife in Auckland and Waiheke Island and a bit of wine tasting and whatever, but Hobbiton, that sort of thing, but never been to the South Island, and it's very, very high on the bucket list.
Oh, mate,
yeah, I know.
Oh, mate, that really surprises me, actually. Wow.
Yeah, never shot the South Island. So, to be honest, it's not for lack of want. It's just. We had planned prior to the pandemic to head over there, and we were on the brink of booking a trip, and hiring a camper to wander around and do what we want to do and be where we want to be. And then the pandemic hit, and everyone shut their borders. You couldn't leave Australia. You couldn't get into New Zealand for love nor money. And so that all went by the wayside. And in the meantime, I've bought a motorhome over here, which I'm expecting delivery soon. So, I think we're probably going to prioritise that because we've put the money into that for the moment. So, it's still on the list though, and I still want to get over there.
Yeah. Well, I feel like over the last couple of months, I feel like every Australian's been over here, for
I've seen a lot of people heading that way, and I can't blame them either. I want to be there. I want to be honest. If I had my choice of places to retire, it would be pretty high on the list too. It would be South Island and New Zealand. I don't know that the wife would appreciate the winters though. She's from the UK and doesn't like cold weather. She's whenever I say where do you want to go, she says take me somewhere hot.
Yeah. Well, I actually enjoy the cold weather. It's I'm not a fan of the heat anymore.
Yeah, no, I'm the same. I prefer the cold. Yeah, you can. I find that you can warm yourself up far easier than you can cool yourself down.
Yeah.
So, what's the most memorable experience you've had while out shooting?
I would say probably one of my trips to Iceland, and it was in the winter, and the night. With Iceland, with the aurora, anything can happen at any moment. And so I went out on this particular night and it was completely clear, completely calm, which is very, very rare for Iceland to have no wind.
Yeah.
And when I started out the nights are like 15 hours long in winter, the darkness. And when I started out the night, there wasn't a single bit or of aurora. No sign of aurora. Wasn't really much forecast that night.
Yep.
Maybe it was like a KP2, KP3, but that can be like incredible in Iceland. So I just went out shooting, and I set up a time lapse in one location, and then I just left it for the night, and I went traveling around looking for different locations and just seeing what could happen. And then I turned up to this church, and I just started shooting it, and then the aurora just started out of nowhere.
Cool.
And I thought, okay, this could be on. And it just started getting bigger and bigger. So I shot there, and I went somewhere else, and then I ended up at this like an estuary that was completely frozen over, and the aurora was just starting to kick off, and it was starting to move from horizon to horizon, like 180 degrees and above me. And I thought, oh, here we go. And it just started building and building. And so I went out to the middle of this estuary, which was completely ice and completely reflective. And then I shot a 180 degree panorama, and then I took a shot of myself. And it turned out to be, you can't really tell in the moment what that final image will look like, because it's so wide, and not until you put it together that you see the full scale of it. So when I was out there, the aurora was all around me. It was going crazy. And then when I put that image together, I got to see how good that moment actually was. But when I was shooting, it was like a lot of people there, and I didn't see anyone else that whole night except earlier on in the night.
Yeah.
But the later half of that night, probably like 10 hours of it, I didn't see another single person.
Wow.
Anywhere. And this aurora was just going mental. And I thought, you just don't know what's going to happen, and you have to put yourself in that place and be prepared to be tired and be prepared to be wrecked to see something incredible. And that moment for me was like all about just taking a chance when there was nothing really happening. And then by the end of the night, it was crazy. And for me, that was just an incredible night. I was out all night, 15 hours of shooting and different locations, and I couldn't believe from the start to the finish how that night progressed. Yeah, and that's something I'll never forget ever.
Yeah, amazing, fantastic.
Yeah.
What have you learned about the world through photography?
I've learned that the world. It's an interesting question, because the last 2 years have been strange, not having travel as an option. So. But up until that point, I felt like the world was very small. You could travel anywhere pretty much within a few days. And so all these locations were pretty accessible. And what I've learned about traveling, especially in photography, is that there are so many incredible, beautiful places, and a lot that are still yet to be seen and shot. I feel like it's about the people that you meet along the way as well. Like I've met a lot of friends through photography. Through New Zealand. Some of my closest friends now are photographers, and ones that I've met while out shooting. Things I didn't really expect to happen, because I generally like shooting by myself. I like to have my own sort of rhythm through the night or whatever I'm doing. But I've made some incredible friends that are like my closest friends, and I feel, you can get these amazing shots and amazing images, but a lot of it is about the relationships that you build along the way and the friendships you make. Because
totally,
with astrophotography, it's often a very lonely existence. So when you find like-minded people, especially in that genre, and that you want to shoot with, that's cool. That's really cool, because sometimes you just want someone to talk to on top of a mountain, and you don't always enjoy being by yourself. So I feel like the travel side of photography has created some great friendships along the way, and I feel that's a really cool thing about photography, that common ground.
Yeah, that's fantastic. How did you, I guess, learn your craft? Do you are you self-taught? Are you done courses? Have you been mentored by people, or did you just sort of pick it up as you went along?
The majority of my journey is self-taught. When I started, as I said before, I didn't know what I was doing with Astro, so I just decided to do these long exposures and see what would happen. And then once that started to kind of become a bit more like routine, I wanted to know more about, because I felt like I had a good eye for photography, but I didn't understand any of the science behind it, didn't understand the exposure triangle of shutter speed and ISO and
Yep.
f-stop. So I did this online diploma for a year of photography that taught me all the science behind photography and all the whys of like how things relate to each other. So once I got a good grip on that, I kind of understood how a camera works and how all those things relate to each other. And then it was a matter of just going out and shooting. And I've pretty much taught myself everything to do with Astro. A lot of it was watching every YouTube clip that I could find at the beginning.
Yeah.
I did a workshop back in the day, like when I was sort of just starting, like because I felt like I got to a point where I was like, I don't know what to do next. And I went on this workshop, this Astro workshop, and it taught me that I could push my camera further than what all the YouTube clips were telling me. And there were these like unwritten rules that people were saying that you couldn't shoot over 3200 ISO and all these kind of like rules. And I was like, okay, when you're new, you just, oh yeah, okay, sure, you believe it, and you don't know what you don't know. So I went to this workshop and it taught me that there are these can be broken. And so once I did that, it really accelerated the growth in terms of what can I actually do, how can I push my camera. And so I was just out shooting and that was just night after night. Every clear and available night I was just shooting, and I just went out obsessed every night, and I just kept shooting and I had one guy just one time just asked me, how you, I had like only a couple thousand followers on Instagram or whatever, and he was like, it was something like, how are you so famous? And I'm like, what? Like, what? I'm not famous. And he goes, and then he was like, well, tell me how to get famous. I'm like, I was like, mate, you just got to shoot, man. You just got to shoot. You got to fail. You got to shoot, and you got to learn.
It sounds like somebody doing it for the wrong reasons, though.
Totally. He just wanted the fame. He just wanted the numbers. He was all about the numbers.
Yeah.
And there's no substitute for hard work. That's my.
Well, it's the 10,000 hours. If you haven't put in 10,000 hours, you're never going to master a craft of any.
That's it. And I feel like I have put in my 10,000 hours. I felt like I've done my dues, and you never want to stop learning. But I feel like unless you have that actual experience of being out there and failing and shooting and learning, no amount of YouTube videos or courses are going to help you, because it's that internal desire that you have to learn and put yourself out there and shoot. So yeah, self-taught, and I've learned a lot of things from other photographers. A couple of friends of mine have been really key in my journey and just said, hey, why don't you try this and play around with this, or have a go with this. And I feel like with those friendships that I've made, especially in the astrophotography world, we share information because we realize that our hearts are in the right place for what we wanted to do. Because a lot of people want to take your information or take what you've learned, but they're not prepared to, it's
to put back in.
Yeah, exactly. And I have a lot of people wanting that from me, but like, until you've shown me or, prepared to put yourself out there, it's like, well, I've learned all this, hardware. I don't want to just give it to you, because you want to know it. So
have you thought about running workshops, or have you run workshops?
Absolutely. I have run a few workshops when I was up in Auckland before the pandemic, and I found it really enjoyable. And so that's something I'm definitely looking forward to doing in the future, getting back into that. I feel like at the moment I'm just establishing myself down here, and I feel like that'll be a big part of my future as well. So because I feel like it's one thing to have the knowledge, but then to keep that knowledge is like selfish as well. And there's a lot of people who want to learn. So absolutely want to share all the things that I've learned at some point as well. And yeah, absolutely. I feel like I've got a lot to contribute in that area. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So what does your process look like? I guess, you've hiked for miles, you're on the top of a mountain and whatever. Are you just sort of plopping the tripod down and doing panos, or are you looking for particular elements in the landscape that you want to feature, or what?
Yeah, it's interesting that question, because when I started, I used to try and shoot multiple, especially foregrounds, because once you capture the night sky, you've got the night sky, right? It's not really going to change that much in that night.
Yeah, the Milky Way looks like the Milky Way.
Yeah. So I would go to the locations like a few years ago, and I would try and shoot as many foregrounds I could through the night. But what I was finding is that I'd come away with like 10 panoramas and only ever would use one or
Yeah.
edit one because that was the best one of the night.
Yep.
So I've started to slow down a lot, and I get to a location and I scout it. I try not to turn up in the dark because it's very hard to find foregrounds in the dark. Sometimes you have to because just the way things are, like the time the hike takes, or whatever the situation is. But
Sure.
if possible, I like to turn up during light and see what foreground I can work with. And since I've started tracking the stars on a equatorial tracker, it's really forced me to slow down and consider my foreground in particular more.
Yeah, right.
So I'm usually, if I can come away with maybe two or three foregrounds and panoramas that night, I'll be happy. But I'm really looking for that one shot that I'm going to come away with, that one foreground that's really going to be different and impactful. So yeah, trying to slow down. Obviously, cloud is very frustrating. As long as it's not over the core, the brightest part of the Milky Way,
Sure.
I'm usually happy if it's a little bit, if it's a bit in frame. But it all depends, because then you can run into stitching errors later on if the cloud's too
right.
thick and the software can't pick up the stars. So, but I don't mind a bit of cloud as long as it's not like a dominant feature in the scene with stars. It's usually not too bad.
Yeah, cool. So you've got the shot, you've got your foreground and everything, and you're heading home. Are you straight into processing from the moment you put the bag down, or are you leaving things to, I guess, ferment for a little bit longer and you think about it?
I usually never edit straight away, unless it's what I would consider a topical shot, such as an aurora, a situational shot that happens and needs to be kind of seen straight away.
Geminids, for example, if you want to say, hey, here's the Geminids from last night, it's no point leaving that for a month, is it?
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like an editorial piece that in the moment it has its value, but like a week later it doesn't have value, because we live in such a fast-paced world that people just move on really quickly. And say there's a celestial event like an aurora or something, if you're like late to the party, no one cares, and that's kind of a sign of what society's like now. If you're like the fifth person to upload a photo, it's like, oh, you've already seen it earlier. And so with these,
I've seen 10 of them.
Yeah, exactly. So with these topical events, you need to be in first to capitalize on those events. But with things like Milky Ways and different locations, I haven't edited to a year later, and I like to keep those images often just for me, because I like to just sit on them and let them marinate on my hard drive. Sometimes too long, to be honest. Sometimes I allow things go for too long, but I'm never in a hurry to rush and edit or force something. I feel like it will be edited when I'm ready to edit it and when I'm ready for people to see it, especially with locations that have been more difficult to get to, and are more meaningful and special to me. I feel like I want to take time and make sure I've got that edit how I want it. Yeah, there's a shot that's one of my most recognized shots, and I probably didn't. It was me on top of a mountain under the Milky Way with a hut, and it took me. It was about 9 months till I even researched those images again, and I just let that sit on my computer. And when I came to it, I was excited about editing it. And I'm usually excited about the locations I get to, but afterwards I'm so tired and so rinsed that I just don't want to touch. I just want to rest and let those things be. And then I'll come back to it at certain times. So yeah, there's no sort of real rules, but it's usually a few months before I'll edit something that I'm really stoked on. Yeah.
Now I'm probably going to get this wrong, but I'd imagine you're spending a fair, particularly with a pano shot, a fair amount of time in post-production to try and stitch that together and get it right. On average, what kind of time would you spend on an edit?
Oh, I would say it could be anywhere between 10 and 40 hours. It's it's a difficult one. It depends on the actual panorama. It could be like a couple of days, and then those couple of hours could be spread over a few weeks as well. Like I'll come back to it, I'll let it sit, come back with fresh eyes. it's really important to come back with fresh eyes, because when you get into that edit, you just get so tunnel visioned on what you're doing that if you don't walk back, come back to it, you like often I've come back and well, what have I done? Like
Yeah.
that's not
Why did I do that?
yeah. So I try not edit a piece in one go. I like to at least have one or two breaks to come back to it. But yeah, with Milky Way panoramas and especially star trails, which can be up to 400, 500, 600 shots, they take a long time, and to get them just right and remove all the artifacts and stuff, it can just take time. So, sometimes up to a couple of days, but sometimes a few hours. It just depends on the scene, really.
Yeah. You must have a fair beast of a machine to deal with, 400 or 500 images at a time. Or are you breaking that up and then?
It used to be a beast of a machine like a couple of years ago, but it's slowed down a bit. But I don't do 500 images in one go. That you'd kind of need a supercomputer to do that.
I was going to say that.
Yeah. So I usually do them in the star trails, in particular, in blocks of 50 to 100.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you print much of your work?
I don't print a lot for myself. I would probably if I had a printer, but I print a little bit for myself. The shots that are more meaningful to me, I print them.
So have you ever hit a creative wall? And if so, how did you handle it?
Absolutely. This year in particular is really interesting. I didn't shoot for probably, when I was up in Auckland, I probably didn't shoot for about 3 months, not a single shot. I was just completely uninspired. Still, it was after I came back from my road trip and I felt excited about the opportunity of moving to the South Island and moving back to Auckland. I just got in this rut of like, I've shot everything and anything around Auckland. I just couldn't think of anything that I wanted to shoot there, and I felt stuck. And so, I've been through those moments, a lot through my journey, and a lot of photographers do. And I felt like this year, this is a really interesting fact. This year, I haven't edited one single Milky Way image that I've shot this year.
Wow.
And we're in the 9th month of the year. And that is over the last 7 years, which I've really been into Astro. That's unheard of. And I feel okay with it to a point, because I feel like I don't need to prove anything anymore. And I don't want to have to prove anything. I felt like, over the last few years, I've done my dues, and a lot of people know my vibe and they know what I'm about. And I don't feel like I need to get an image out there. And I think everything with moving out of Auckland and moving down here and wanting to get established down here, I've not felt in the rush or the need to get my Milky Way shots out in particular. But it's very, very strange to have not edited a Milky Way image for me this year. And I've been shooting a lot of Milky Way this year, and I've got some incredible shots sitting there. I know that, and I started editing one, and I probably got about 3/4 of the way through, but I felt like I needed to walk away from it and come back to it, because I was just stuck with that particular image. So it's not for the lack of want. It's just like I don't feel like I need to. But I feel like now, since I'm down here, and with all the adventures I've had and the creativity that's coming, there's that desire to edit and to release something new soon is coming back. And I think for me, that was the most important thing, was getting my head right, getting my mental state back in a good place, and moving down here as I've achieved that. So yeah, good things are coming soon, I can tell you. So, but it's just been more important for me just to get myself established here and just get myself into a good rhythm again.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. Good, Great to hear that you're getting back in the groove.
Absolutely, mate. I've been out every available chance. It's been interesting in New Zealand this winter. It's been an incredibly difficult winter to shoot Astro, and right throughout the country, people have struggled to get clear nights. And I can think of 5 or 6 nights in the last 6 months that have been clear for Astro, and it's just very not like New Zealand to be this rainy and cleady. So
yeah, it's much the same over here. I mean, even some of the guys that are out, west, where clear skies rule. There's near desert conditions, in the outback, and there's normally never cloud, and yet they're chasing storms instead. Some of them. So.
Yeah. There's a lot more mood and kind of daytime weather to continue. So it's it's been interesting this year.
Yeah, I think it's going to continue through summer, unfortunately. So,
Oh yeah, they're expecting a bit of a wet summer over here, so we'll see how that pans out.
yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting.
What do you see as the biggest challenge facing photography right now?
I think there's a big challenge in capturing images that are unique. I feel like I alluded to before, photography has become this very saturated thing. Like everyone has a camera. There's a billion photos going up online every day. There's just so much to contend with. So
Mm,
to stand out from the crowd or to shoot something really unique, I think for a photographer is the biggest challenge. And then it's about how to market that. If you're looking at making money from photography, it's looking at ways to be different and to stand out. And I feel like that is probably the biggest challenge for a lot of photographers. I know, there's a lot of social media platforms, and I feel like the challenge of those is that the algorithm is limiting people's creativity by the exposure and the audiences that are seeing their work. I feel that we're very limited in terms, we've got these platforms to share our work, but I feel like such a small percentage of our audience actually gets to see them. It's
yeah.
that's incredibly frustrating, because then it's like, well, what's the point in posting? What's the point in sharing images if only 5 to 10% of my audience is going to see it? So I feel like
That's
these
it.
companies have restricted the ability to market ourselves. So I feel like that's one of the key things for photographers, is trying to find ways around that. Yeah.
Mm. Do you think the advent of that shift towards video, particularly for platforms like Instagram and TikTok, and the rise of video, is adversely impacting photography in a big way?
Absolutely. I feel like video, because we need entertainment now, and to capture people's attention, video is one of those ways that you can capture people's attention. And things with reels are very addictive, and you can see that, like with TikTok coming on board and being video, and then Instagram wanting to compete with that, and other platforms promoting video. It's obviously become this very, like, what's the next thing that's going to capture my attention, and I feel like video can do that more so than
Well,
images.
we're hardwired to track color and movement. You look at babies when they're really young. If you
Yeah.
show them something that moves and it's brightly coloured, they're going to look that way.
Yeah.
And I guess that hard wiring is what the platforms are playing on, because if something moves and it's brightly coloured, then you're going to look at it. You can't help
That's
yourself.
exactly, mate. And then the question becomes, well, do I follow these trends? Do I change my style to try and
Mm.
do that? And I don't really know the answer to that, because then it's like yes and no. Because if you do, then you almost become a slave to that platform, and
You're
then
rewarding something that you don't necessarily like. Yeah.
exactly. And then do you lose yourself in that? Do you lose yourself in the art, because like now you're not necessarily focusing on what you want to be doing, but what you need to be doing. And
Yeah.
like, I don't think that need to follow what those platforms are demanding is a good thing. I'm doing my best not to follow those trends. Like reels,
Same here. Yeah.
yeah, it's frustrating, mate. It's really frustrating. I feel like it's changing people to adapt to these things which they're dictating, and I don't think that's necessarily a good thing for artists.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I also understand, like, people wanting to get exposed. You can't fault people for doing it either,
Oh
because
no,
yeah,
like old mate who wanted to work out how to get famous.
yeah, yeah. I think
There's one of your answers.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I don't know. It's interesting times in terms of the social media aspect side of the creative process and the marketing of that.
Yeah. If you weren't a photographer, what would you be?
I feel like I would be probably still trying to pursue the TV thing, the cameraman thing. I
Still
really
making
enjoyed,
visual images in some form.
yeah, like I really enjoyed my work that I was doing before the pandemic kind of closed it all off. So I'll probably be continuing in that as a focus. Yeah, I think that's what I'd be doing still. And I think I'd still, if I was working, then I think living in a big city is bearable, but without that, or without some sort of creative output, it's yeah, it's just too much.
What
Mm.
advice do you have for someone that's just starting out and wanting to get into, say, Astro, for example?
Go out and shoot and shoot and shoot. Watch YouTube videos. Just try and download as much information you can from any source that you can get. Do a workshop. If you find a workshop like that, will absolutely accelerate your growth and your ability to learn to how to capture the night sky. But there's no substitute for hard work, mate. And I feel like all the people that I respect, and especially in astrophotography, are out there doing it. They're out there shooting. You don't always see a massive online presence from them because they're out shooting. But
Yeah.
when they do drop a new image, I can tell now the time and effort that's gone into an image, just through my journey and my experience. And so, just absolutely no hard substitute for hard work. And I feel like that's just going out and shooting and failing and learning your gear and learning what's possible with the gear you have, and then learning what gear you need to achieve the result that you want to achieve.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Who's inspiring you at the moment in terms of photography?
A good friend of mine, Paul Wilson, just producing quality work time and time again. And, because I know him personally and, he's a great mate of mine, I know the work that goes into his images. I know the preparation that goes into his images. So his work is, and it's world class stuff that he's producing. There's a friend of mine in Norway, Adrian, producing arguably some of the best aurora images in the world. And he's another one who's just out there all the time, just absolutely obsessed with aurora, and someone that, he's someone that I want to shoot with one day and learn from as well, because he's doing something that I want to be doing, and he's doing it just incredibly. So yeah, those are two guys that come to mind immediately. There's another guy over in Queenstown, Lee Cook.
Yep.
Another astrophotographer, just producing absolutely world-class images. And, that's super inspiring when I see other people going to the lengths that they go to get their images. And it motivates me to want to go to those lengths and be on those links as well. So, these people are just, they're inspirations because they're out there doing it, mate. And,
yeah, fantastic.
They're not talking the talk, they're actually walking it. And that for me is that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks for those. I've got one more question for you. And for many, it's the most important question I can ask.
Let's go.
Do you like pineapple on pizza?
I'm not opposed to pineapple on pizza. I don't really get the hate for it. Like, I could go either way. It's not a thing for me. I enjoy it. I don't mind
you don't necessarily order it, but if it's there, you'll take it.
I'll have a Hawaiian pizza, mate. I'm not, pizza's a pizza. But yeah, I don't really get the the argument for it.
I was talking to Vieri Bottazzini a little while ago, and being Italian, it was an absolute dead set no.
I was going to say, I had an Italian flatmate, and he just couldn't believe that pizzas came with pineapple. But I guess we've always known it to be that way, so I don't know. It was, we don't know any different. But
I know. There's the travesty over here of putting an egg on a pizza.
I've never heard that. Well,
they actually call in some places they call it the Aussie, and basically it's pretty much ham, tomato base, cheese, and an egg cracked on top.
Now I think that's going too far, mate. Let's be honest. I've never heard of that.
It'd have to be the Aussies that take it too far.
Well, I was going to say, you Australians, you're an interesting bunch, and not surprised in some ways.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me today, mate. It's been absolutely wonderful getting to know you and your work a little bit better. Where can people find what you do?
So it's been great to talk to you, Grant, and great to connect. Been following each other for a while, so it's good to finally have a chat about photography. My photography is under my Shadow and Shade, both on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. And you can find me on those platforms under that name.
Brilliant. All right. Links to those will be in the show notes. Thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoyed the show, and keep listening because I'll be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work in this podcast at grantswinburnphotography.com. I'm also on Vero, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram and Facebook. I'm Grant Swinburne. Hope to see you out shooting soon.